name is Anna Catanzaro. My husband, Vince, and I are members of St. Francis Cabrini Parish. Several weeks ago, during a Sunday Mass, I happened to glance at the stained glass window in the church and noticed the words, "Consoler of the Sick," next to the image of St. Francis Xavier Cabrini. Those words caught my attention and stayed with me for several days. A few days later, after morning Mass, I was speaking with a parishioner who mentioned that she was on her way to take a homebound parishioner to an appointment. During our conversation, she told me that many parishioners are unable to attend Mass because of illness or disability. A week later, during a conversation with Jean Madden, she asked if I would consider writing a bulletin article and recording a weekly message based on my experiences as a caregiver and in ministry, especially for the many caregivers in our parish and those they care for. One thing I have always remembered from studying and praying with Scripture is that when something is repeated 3 times, the message is important. In a short period of time, I received the same message in 3 different ways. As I reflected on the stained glass window and those 2 conversations, it became clear that God was asking me to respond. So I'll begin with how I believe God prepared me over many years to become both a caregiver and a lay minister in the church. I arrived in this country with my family at the age of 7. My mother's family was made up of practicing devout Catholics. My father's family was Catholic, but only marginally practicing. As new immigrants with parents learning English and very little money, my brothers and I attended public schools. We went to Mass occasionally, but certainly not every week. My mother never mastered English and often said that she didn't understand what was happening at Mass. Yet, I vividly remember that she always kept a prayer book and rosary on her bedside table. And almost every evening I saw her praying. Watching her pray left a lasting impression on me, even though I did not yet understand prayer. My mother was the youngest of 7 children. Her father died when she was 2, and her mother died when she was a young teenager. She was largely raised by her older sisters. The second oldest, my godmother, became one of the greatest influences on my understanding of what it means to be Catholic and to care for others as God calls us to do. My mother's oldest sister never married and lived with my godmother's family all her life. I later learned that she had hoped to become a religious sister, but family responsibilities likely made that impossible. 3 of my older cousins lived with my family for a time after we emigrated to the United States. 2 others came to America alone as teenagers and were cared for by the Catholic Church until the family was reunited. Like many immigrant families, my godmother's home was always open to others. Several generations, extended family members, friends, and even children whose parents had not yet immigrated lived there until they could get on their feet. The house was not large, but there was always room for someone who needed a bed and someone to care for them. As for my own life, I had no intention of becoming a caregiver. In high school, I planned to study foreign affairs and travel the world. But during my first semester of college, I became seriously ill and had to withdraw. After recovering, I tried accounting, but soon realized that it wasn't for me. I married, started a family, and still felt drawn to continue learning. One day I visited the local community college where an advisor encouraged me to apply to the nursing program. Since nothing else had worked, I thought, why not? With the help of family members who provided childcare, I completed the program, became a registered nurse, and began my career. 3 years later, my mother was diagnosed with brain cancer. She was only 59 years old. Although I had cared for many seriously ill patients, this was different. This was my mother. Sadly, I was not in the habit of praying, nor did I have a parish community to support me. When we brought my mother home from the hospital, we focused on her physical needs: radiation treatments, medications, bathing, dressing, and feeding. As a nurse, I knew how to provide that care. But the first thing my mother asked for was her prayer book and rosary. Sometimes she simply held them. Other days, she would read from the prayer book or begin praying the Hail Mary or the Lord's Prayer before becoming too weak to finish. I stayed close, held her hand when she became anxious, and tried to understand what she needed. Although I had watched her pray throughout my childhood, I never offered to pray with her because I didn't know how. I felt awkward and embarrassed. One day, without telling anyone, I went to a weekday morning mass. For the first time, I truly prayed, or rather, I begged God to help me let go of my anger and my fear so I could better care for my mother. I could meet her physical needs, but I didn't know how to help her with her spiritual needs. I realized I could not give her what I did not have. God answered that prayer. Gradually, my anger and fear gave way to peace, and I became more attentive to my mother's spiritual needs as well as those of the patients I cared for. 6 weeks after her diagnosis, my mother died on the eve of the solemnity of the Assumption of Mary, with her prayer book and rosary beside her. After her death, I committed myself to learning how to pray, practicing my faith, raising my family in the Catholic tradition, and deepening my understanding of how we are called to care for one another. I sought opportunities to study the spiritual traditions of our faith, pray with Scripture, and to continue growing spiritually. I am still very much on that journey. Since then, God has given me many opportunities to learn to care for the whole person, especially those in most need. Next week, I will share how those experiences have shaped my work as a nurse and teacher of caregivers.